If I'm pressed to offer a single word that encapsulates and describes what I see happening here, I have to use the word control.
February 1956. In the heart of New York, Operation Big City was underway. A Ford Mercury, specially adapted with a hidden exhaust pipe, pumped out bacteria onto the streets of Manhattan. Undercover agents entered the city's subway system, their cases equipped with tiny motors, which covertly dispersed the bacteria Bacillus globuli. Light bulbs filled with bacteria were dropped in front of trains and down ventilation shafts to test how far the bacteria would spread through the subway system. For years, these public experiments were kept secret from the citizens of New York. 30 similar trials were conducted at public locations all across America. One of the earliest experiments had fatal consequences. In 1951, the Army sprayed the bacteria Serratia marcescens over San Francisco. 11 hospital patients developed a mysterious infection, and within days, Edward Nevin died from an illness caused by the same bacteria.
The test began early in 1965 as barges took position near a Pacific atoll called Johnston.
Inside the barges were cages filled with monkeys. The monkeys were both on the deck of the barge and inside the hold of the barge. There were also human beings wearing spacesuits and probably quite nervous.
A low-flying military plane sprayed a 32-mile line of germs. Germs that cause a lethal disease, tularemia, or rapid fever. Drifting over a vast swath of ocean, the microbes remained infectious for 60 miles.
The barges were towed back to the island, and in the next days, the monkeys became ill. Ultimately, about half of the monkeys became sick, and of them, most of them died.
These large-scale field tests demonstrated beyond any shadow of a doubt the feasibility of biological warfare. And that is why we know that one particular agent, when properly stabilized and properly disseminated, is a terrific, very effective weapon system.
In theory, a single jet could knock out a city. It could perhaps infect as much as half the people in Los Angeles.
And I want you to start off by imagining something. I want you to picture yourself living in a peaceful town where life is pretty easy. You have beaches, you have parks, a river, and children have plenty of space to run free. But what the people in this idealistic town don't realise is that the military is literally showering them in chemicals. Most people in this town have no idea that chemicals are falling from above on a regular basis, but there are some who have noticed strange clouds in the sky. Clouds that look like normal contrails from commercial aircraft, but the only difference is that these trails don't disappear quickly. Instead, they linger for up to an hour as the chemicals slowly fall upon the town below. And yes, the idea of the government dumping chemicals on us from high above is fairly easy to dismiss as nonsense. I mean, why on earth would they do such a thing? But it doesn't take much reading before the evidence starts to stack up.
It looked like hail laying on top of the wood box and everywhere else. So I just went over and I touched it, and it wasn't hail. It was a gelatinous-like material.
The substance, it was very mushy. It's almost like if you had Jell-O in your hand, and you know, you could pretty much squish it through your fingers.
I got sick, my wife got sick, my daughter, everybody that lived here got sick.
Everybody in the whole town came down with like a flu, only it was a really hard flu. It didn't last like 7 days, it lasted like 7 weeks to 2 or 3 months.
Whatever the substance was, it made me violently sick.
My mom had been vomiting. She had extreme vertigo. She complained that she had difficulty with her vision. Her vision was blurring. For some reason, as we were going out the door, I remembered the substance, and I wondered if perhaps it might have had some sort of an effect on her. So I opted at that moment to take a sample of this gelatinous material to the hospital.
I saw what I think was a eukaryotic cell. It's basically a cell that has a definable nucleus and is found present in most animals.
We had a significant amount of military aircraft flying over the home prior to this happening.
Every day almost, slow-flying bombers, helicopters, all black in color. And we kind of thought maybe it might have come from them.
They let off things in the air all the time here. Testing, you know, there's testing done all over the place. There's a lot of places you can't go into.
Maybe we were a biological experiment of some kind, a small one, maybe just get people a little bit sick to find out, say if an enemy did come over here with a biological bomb or something and dropped it. Maybe just a test run to see what would happen.
So what I look at there and I think are contrails, you're telling me are chemtrails?
Yes, that a contrail would be dissipated by now.
It would?
Yes, it would.
Longtime Cedar Glen resident Gretchen Sherman says she has never seen anything like it.
How big was it?
Oh, it covered the entire Cedar Glen area.
A cloud of dust, leaving a sticky yellow slime all over her car. It happened again last February, and calls began pouring into the local Alpenhorn newspaper.
And they had a tremendous upsurge of children that were not going to school at that time.
Pharmacist Ed Burrows says it is the most mysterious illness he's seen in 22 years on the mountain.
A lot of eye infection problems, upper respiratory problems, nosebleeds.
The nearby March Air Force Base say it didn't come from them. Others said it was a pollen cloud. The Department of Health found a yellowish tint on a tissue submitted for testing. But, quote, there was no sign of any biological form, such as cedar pollen, and the test was ruled inconclusive.
This is inevitably military or something going on. The government, the Air Force, they send out what's known as chaff, and it's a way to experiment with the radar system. And when you see this kind of a pattern like this, you can rest assured there's something going on. They're actually little bitty magnetic and little bitty strips of, whether it's aluminum, you know, they change it, but what happens is the radar deflects off of all these little pieces, and they use it actually as a jamming mechanism for radar in warfare, but it can also jam our radar and make rain appear that there really is no rain out there.
Well, is the situation really that serious there in Ukraine?
Well, yes, it is. It seems that it's getting more serious every day, mainly because the death toll is rapidly rising. Over the weekend, it has doubled. But for the time being, over 180,000 people across the country have been diagnosed with different respiratory diseases, and the situation seems to be really, really serious. And people are here on the ground are starting to panic.
And that is, we are now in a state of affairs where we have open-air testing on a global scale direct lying about it from top officials. United States Air Force lied early in the game, direct lie to the American public, calling this a hoax without any real documentation of any kind to support their claim. The scale and arrogance and magnitude of the effect is what's different, and that is important. It's not the same as conducting some localized test for some defensive project. This is open-air operations. It's not a test. This thing is in place. Our atmosphere has been changed.
And they seem to do all their spraying at night, because when I get up about daybreak, I see them all in the air. I mean, Grand Central Station in the skies, you see strings everywhere.
Since 99, but also the spider web residual after
spraying, and the trails red and cover the whole sky. The biological component to it, and there's a weather modification.
Where the Russians used such during World War II to keep the germs
spread and then cover the whole sky. So they're definitely doing
substances on Saturday were showered upon their homes and cars, and it's a oily residue that
you've always spraying where there was currently cloud cover. You know, so a lot of people look up and they're like, okay, that's just the contrails from the plane.
There are biological components that have been repeatedly identified
for a little bit, get up to another cloud. Well, maybe that's the cloud
the aircraft behind the front wing.
It's not a matter of some little test pilot. You are breathing an altered atmosphere now. We all are.